1 second.
Are you guys, is this recording or is this just a live thing?
It's live, but then it'll be on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Cool. Are you guys live time now? Live, coming into a live show right now?
No, we're not live yet.
Yes, we are. We are live.
Oh,
We just went live.
And now, which I think there's like it was a 4-second delay or something.
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, so apparently we're all waiting for this live.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the We Are the People podcast here on a special Sunday night edition. It is a great honor to be with you tonight. I am Mick Talbot, one of the hosts of We Are the People.
And Patrick, it must be one of the other hosts here.
And I'm Steven, another of the hosts. And we have Adam.
Okay, so we had a bet going before the show started on how we pronounce your last name, Adam, and who's going to win the $5.
Phonetically it would be Sh, middle of my last name is War, and then the last part's the one that trips over up the Z with the hard E, so Schwarze.
Schwarze, kind of like Shorzy from my favorite TV show. All right, so Adam is joining us tonight. He's a retired Navy SEAL and former infantry Marine veteran who announced his candidacy for the U.S. Senate seat in Minnesota, aiming to replace Senator Tina Smith, who will not seek re-election in 2026. Adam, running as a Republican, emphasizes his commitment to addressing rising consumer prices, ensuring effective use of tax dollars. And we would love to chat with you tonight. Adam, how are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for the opportunity to join. I think this is the second or third press thing I've done since announcing, so I'm excited. Still new in this theater, but I think we have a mutual friend, since his name's Bull. I think just chatting with that guy, I think we align pretty philosophically, so I'm excited to get into it. And things where we don't align philosophically, let's have those hard conversations, because I think we're still all on the same team at the end of the day, so I can hopefully grow and learn some things from you guys, and hopefully vice versa.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if there's one thing the American people are in the most dire need for, it's an honest conversation.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
That's truly my brand. Is if I ever walk in any room, I know I'm never the smartest person, to be frank, but if I've had one good trait that the Marines helped me develop was just shut up and be on receive mode. And I really am good at identifying talent. And so I had some great leaders in the Corps that then transitioned when I got, my commission in the teams and became, the commander of some of those really important missions. I've developed a knack for being quiet and finding out who the really capable and talented people are, and then building really good driving machines. And I apologize, I don't know your backgrounds, but if there's any guys with a military background, you know how impressive it is when you develop a team that all has buy-in to the mission and they're all working for that same end state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a perfect analogy of what we really are looking for now is leaders. We need leaders. And so I know, Stephen, you are probably the most plugged in when it comes to the political side of things. And I know you had a few questions that you wanted to ask of Adam tonight. I know Patrick had a couple as well. And I just have one or two that I'd just like to get your opinion on and see where we can go with our friendship.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I think like the first one was for me because it's really essential to producing a kind of government that the American people would really they expect to have. They haven't been getting for a very long time, but it's what you theoretically taught about in school, and used to be taught about in school. I suppose I should modify that statement. And that is constitutionality of law. The idea that most people become aware of the Constitution at some point, even the public education system leaves them high and dry of it, and then they start having a lot of very upsetting feelings and questions because none of that stuff seems to fly anywhere in the places where we expect it to. And so it has become a topic of great concern for anyone who's interested in, say, I don't know, something we could describe as the America of yore, I guess, or the idea that is America. If we want that back, if we want that to be realized, obviously something needs to be done in terms of viewing law in a constitutional way, as opposed to just viewing it as a, how can I sell this law for my next election? So, thus the question, what are your feelings on how constitutionality plays into lawmaking, and how will you approach constitutionality in terms of bills you may see and things you may be called upon, even pressure to pass or vote for, rather, in your upcoming tenure?
Yeah, great, top-notch question off the bat, guys. So how I, view my political Venn diagram, if you will, is I would say I'm not a hard L, but I'm philosophically a libertarian, and then the fundamental basis of that is I'm a constitutional conservative. I think that the federal government, now I'm ready for a federal race, the federal government was designed to do one thing, provide collective defense, and then per the Jeffersonian doctrine, export business interests abroad, not our manufacturing, not anything else, but just create business ventures that are good for American vested interests abroad and to bring money into our economy. Those are the two functions of the federal government. Everything else, you blur the lines, and then when we get to 2025, when you blur the lines to the point where we're so fat, you're having to take these huge swaths via Doge, that we're going to have some trials, we're going to have some second order effects that are very uncomfortable for the American people. But when you're getting fat and happy for hundreds of years and losing your way from that constitutional basis of limited government, you can't. The simple analogy is you can't have drink forever without a hangover. And I think America is due now for the hangover, and that's going to be a difficult process. And because we were drunk for so long, Americans are going to. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very uncomfortable. But as a leader and somebody who's fought for our Constitution, lived and breathed the document, seen, I've been in 70 countries, I've seen governments all across the planet. I know just how special America is with that exceptionalism, with that beautiful document of the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, and those things truly mean something to me. Very, very certainly, it's gonna be difficult. And as a leader, I'm not gonna lie to the American public. Like I think a lot of our leaders, our congressmen, or our state senator, or Minnesota, or U.S. senators on both sides of the aisle. That's the problem, is we're lacking leadership in government now that just kicks the can down the road to the next 2-year cycle, the next 6-year cycle, and that's not doing the American people any justice.
Holy jeez Louise. Wow. Yeah. Holy cow. Did he literally touch on every topic I wanted to hear about tonight in one breath? That's beautiful, man. That is absolutely how the American people need to be treated. And that is really how the American politician needs to see things right now, because it is out of whack and it needs to go back down to exactly what it was designed to be. And that is a small government run by the people, not run against the people, that the way it's going right now.
Yeah, I'm for, if you're gonna, have a bloated government, at least keep the lowest level possible, right? If Minnesotans want to have high taxes, which objectively Minnesotans, especially in Hennepin County, they're making like a median house income of $70,000+. They're not hurting the average family in Hennepin County. If they want to have a bloated and fat government, I don't recommend it. But I'm for allowing the local governments to do that if people want to vote for it. What I take particular exception, and is a national security issue, with the bloated waste and federal spending of the federal government. I want to be very careful about that now. The federal government, that rate of debt that we own within the next 10 years is supposed to pass our GDP. When you cross that threshold, the viability of our state becomes a question.
100%. That's... I watch a lot of podcasts, and that's been one of the topics lately on most of them is how are we going to be able to pull out of this $37 trillion debt just because Doge is finding all this stuff. And there's a bunch of things going on behind the scenes that I think are actually going to make... See, the great thing about Donald J. Trump is he's a negotiator. He's an amazing negotiator. And that's what he's doing right now, is he's negotiating with everybody on how to get things back to the way it used to be when America was the greatest country in the world. I still believe we are, but financially, obviously, no, we're not, and all those other things. But
we are. I think we are, but we're running an unsustainable end game with how things are going.
100%. My question for you right now is about crime and public safety. Now, obviously, Minnesotans have seen a rise in crime, especially in the Twin Cities. What is your plan to support law enforcement, hold criminals accountable, and restore safety to our communities?
Well, I think you guys, my bio wasn't briefed on the podcast, but I was a Marine for 10 years before I was a SEAL officer for 11. The majority of my Marine brothers, especially from the infantry, they are in some sort of law enforcement capacity since leaving the force. Those are lucky to still have their lives. So for me, law enforcement is one of those hills I will die on. I think it's reprehensible that the leftist politicians in Minnesota, after George Floyd, the first thing they did was start the defund the police movement, which then took a national attention, and that was a homegrown thing. Started with from Walls not supporting the police to not making calls during the 4 days where our cities all burned down. To Dean Phillips and Omar and all the squad. That's been a leftist thing. The problem as a politician is people don't have long memories. So for the majority of Americans, probably not you or the people that are paying attention to your show, because you just pay attention to these things a little bit more. They've forgotten that defund the police was even a thing. Well, I can tell you, gentlemen, that is one of the hills that I will die on. And also, again, just to pull back, as somebody who's in the military for over 20 years, the how you solve that problem, which again, it's not even up for debate that there's problems within our police and our police forces. But the solution is not to defund. If you have a problem, what you actually need to do is provide more resources so you can increase the threshold of your recruiting, so you're getting better recruits from the beginning. And then the big so what that was never talked about is the man, train, and equipping. Again, there's been other incidents around the country and even in Minnesota where there was missteps in our policing. That's not the officer's fault. That's the city and the state's fault for failing the officers by not manning and training and equipping them. Again, I'm just going to say it. The Kim Potts grabbing for the gun instead of the taser, and she was one of the most quote-unquote qualified people to do that line of work. I think she's even an instructor. Again, that is I look at that issue not as a racist issue, not as a we need to defund the police, but we need to obviously provide more training, because that's a problem, right? We can't have our law enforcement going to the wrong apparatus. That's a big deal. But how you solve that isn't defunding, it's investing into that problem set, increasing your recruiting product, and then providing more less than lethal training, providing more lethal training, providing more transition training, providing more all of those things. You need to focus on the manning, training, equipping, which from a military standpoint is like common sense, duh. But the politicians who just want to have political wins and don't have the moral compass to back the first responders and the police, it was just missed entirely. And I think that's really a travesty. And I think we owe a debt. I'll do one more little segue. There's no way I could be a SWAT person or a police officer in Minneapolis. At least when I was doing my Marine job or these Navy SEAL missions, every time I came home, I was very blessed to have people love and respect me. To see the lack of respect and appreciation that we're having for our law enforcement people that are truly on the front lines in our home state and our communities, the lack of respect, it really it makes me sad, especially since some of these guys and gals are ones who I served with downrange, and to know that they first off, they put their line on the country in these really auspicious places where a lot of people that I served with didn't come home, and to know that they survived that, then wanted to start a family or have a different calling, pursue service in a different life, and they go and do these very risky jobs now in our communities within our homeland, and now they're being spat on. It truly just breaks my heart, frankly.
My son was in the National Guard and got called down from northern Minnesota down there to stand on the streets that night, and he called me and said he couldn't tell me where he was, but he just wanted to call and tell me he loved me. And I'm like, now, if that shit would have been taken care of the right way, my son wouldn't have been standing down there on a street with a unloaded M16 in his hand. So to me, my biggest complaint about all of that was lack of leadership in our government, in the Minnesota government. That is absolutely 100% lack of leadership. You're right, though. A lot of what we need to do with our police force has been the same thing as always. It is make it the qualifications harder so you get better candidates, because and look, I'm not saying anything about the DEIs or anything, but the best candidate should be the best candidate that you have. I've never been a big fan of you have to have so many of something. No, the best candidate for the job should be. And yes, Kim Potts, that is a very tragic story, but it's also something that could have been prevented. So, but I appreciate your honest answer on that. That is one of my big things is living in northern Minnesota. I hate going down to the cities. I don't like having to carry my gun everywhere I go. But if I make a trip through the cities, I'm locked and loaded. I'm like, we shouldn't have to live in that kind of society, especially in such a beautiful state as Minnesota. I mean, come on. Anyway, back to the other guys. I'll let them ask another question here, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Adam.
Sure.
Yeah, to follow on to that National Guard thing, I was reached out to by, no joke, at least one National Guardsman who was activated for riots and asked if they were overrun if I would extract him.
Oof.
Which, admittedly, since I knew this kid real well, and he was not short on bravery. He'd go wherever. He just knew that there was a solid shot if they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It would be 5 or 6 on 5 or 600 and no ammunition. And no orders. No orders to engage, no orders to...
I'll be honest, tonight is the first time I'm hearing that they didn't have ammo. I mean, that's just a thing, as a Marine, you would never, ever deploy. And if you don't have ammo, why do you have a gun? That just doesn't make sense. And you have to, if you're trusting somebody to be at that time and place, you have to trust them to do their job. Well, they're National Guard, they need a gun. And if you have a gun, that's unfathomable. I had no idea they had guns, but no ammo.
Hand to God, my son told me he has an empty magazine.
That is wild.
It was supposed to be for a show of...
Wow. Yeah,
it was there for a show of force, was all it was for. And obviously we know how that turned out when precinct, 5 or 4 got burned down? Yeah, that was real... Anyway.
I've heard military what we call TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, and I've done some of that training. It's called SASO, stability, sustainment operations, SASO. And so part of that is riot stuff. But guess what? You get riot gear. They don't just give you an M16 without, or have a magazine that's unloaded. You're just asking for more risk on your forces then. And also, by the way, if they get overrun, now you're getting automatic weapons into a corrupted civilian populace. That is wild. I did not know that happened, guys. I'll look into that.
At least give them some like 40 Mike chalk or something. Don't just send them out with like a glorified airsoft rifle and tell them like, all right, buddy.
Well, if the mission is to do counter riot, then you give them batons and shields and face shields. You give them that gear. You don't give them a weapon that's useless.
Indeed.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Thank you guys for putting that on my radar.
Also, I'm hearing that my audio isn't coming through the best. Am I coming through mostly okay?
Loud and clear.
Solid. Good deal.
Is it me, maybe?
No. I've gotten some takes back from some folks telling me. So I was like, oh boy. So it looks like it might just be like a codec thing with the live. Which I mean, that
probably
happens. There's not a ton we can do about it.
Go ahead there.
I was going to say, your hits on the constitutionality stuff is A1, dude. A1, you got my vote, more or less.
I look at our country as a house, and it was built on this wonderful foundation, which is the Constitution. So that is like, that's what set us up the rest of the country, is on that foundation, which is the Constitution. Can we should we, just as again as a Marine, we always want to be improving our fighting position. We always want to improve our house, update the blinds, redo the front door, immigration, whatever, put bars on it right now, bar the front door, again, make all the changes in the house, always improve the house. But that foundation is what makes our country so unique amongst any other country that I've ever been to in the world. I've been to over 70 of them. So I've seen it. Again, the American is very unique and very beautiful because of that specific document.
Yeah.
65 more than I have. I have, however, read that there are lots of beautiful constitutions for lots of horrible third world places, and that's very disappointing, but nobody there cares about them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference here.
I've never been to a country that had a constitution that wasn't built off of the United States Constitution. If you look at Japan, the Reformation after World War II, they essentially just tried to piecemeal the best parts of our Constitution and redo Japan after the war, and now look at how it crushes.
Right. It's just the foundation matters, and how much a populace genuinely believes in that foundation matters. It's about the only form of the cartoon magic that you watch as a kid in real life is good philosophy and law. If the populace doesn't hold that same philosophy, it's almost impossible to maintain it. And that leads me to the next thing that I wanted to mention, which was the just god-awful state of fraud in this state. Which, the Minnesota people have been basically robbed blind for decades. And now it's becoming abundantly clear as it's become very, very, very forward, not subtle in the least. And I don't expect you to have a positive view on it by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm curious what your take on the current fraud situation is, given how much has been lifted from the taxpayers to no productive avail, and what do you feel that landscape is going to look like when it starts becoming a thing? Because a lot of the reps that you may end up serving with are probably implicated. So that has its own challenges.
Are you saying kind of? No, shit, they're all on the take.
The second question up front is, we have a U.S. Senator who just announced that she's not going to run again for the U.S. Senate, and Tina Smith, because she was objectively caught red-handed doing insider trading, I think 4 times by the liberal media now, not like Fox News, MSNBC was like, come on, Tina, you're on the Senate Health Committee, you can't buy penny stocks, and then they turn into multi-million-dollar stocks 2 months later. So the whole racket about her stepping away for her family, I think that everybody who knows even a surface level of politics understands why she's walking away from this race. But that's a good thing. I'd rather still not have to go against an incumbent, even though one that's very, very corrupted. All I can do is say to you gentlemen that I grew up from a poor family. I'll be entering the United States Senate as a poor candidate who's only served in the military my whole life. And when I leave the Senate, I will still be a poor person who's just happy to serve our great country. I think somebody who raised their hand a month after 9/11, so after just watching the Twin Towers fall, I was in school my senior year, and then on my 18th birthday, the very first day I'm allowed to serve my country, I swear in as a Marine Corps infantryman. And I spent my first 2 deployments when I'm not shooting bad guys, burning human feces in burn pits. I'm not motivated by money. I'm not motivated by power. I'm motivated by love for our beautiful country. And in 2020, when I realized that our country is going in a dangerous and perilous way, I do what have done my entire military career. I try to peel back the onion until I could find the base of the problem set. What is the fundamental problem at issue, and then how can I embrace that problem and make it my be, essentially. And that is, it's a lack of good leaders in government, and frankly, I think it's a bipartisan issue, especially when we're talking about spending and budgets and size of the federal government. And so now, I do what I've done my whole life, is I find a problem, I embrace it, and I become part of the solution, not the problem.
Now, are you trying to tell me that the scene from Jarhead was accurate?
I don't remember that specific scene, but
it's after he gets wasted in their one of their I think it's like a forward outpost they've got going on, and he gets caught on Christmas Day, just absolutely gone, hungover like nobody's business, and something burned down, and he gets what was it, sentenced to burning shitters for for like the next 3 days or something crazy like that.
That's not a sentence. That's just a way of life. If you're a young infantryman, and
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
everybody does it. If you're a new guy, everybody's got to earn the that's how you're taking care of the trash.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
The same act is the thing. Why we're having all these weird respiratory issues, because that was just a thing. I don't think we even knew.
Get out of here.
It was the way of life. I mean, yeah. My point is that I think my record shows that I'm not in this for power or money. I've lived my whole life without either of those things. I'm in it for the mission. And it's an important mission. This is the most important mission I've ever taken part of, and that's including the last 6 years of my life, where I was very fortunate enough to screen from the regular West Coast SEAL teams for this special mission that does near peer competitor, great power competition, no fail type missions. If we screw these things up, nuclear holocaust is on the line. Frankly, they're nuclear competitors. Some of these countries, but I think it's actually really analogous to running for Senate or federal office, because just as those missions were nuanced in a way that there's a problem and you have to find, as the mission commander, the solution. You pick your teams, you pick the gear, you pick the communications. It's not as simple as finding an L on a battlefield like 99% of missions are, where you find the bad guy, you set up the L, kill the bad guy, prosecute through. These are very nuanced things, and also they're 3-year processes for some of these missions, like 2-3 years just do that one thing. Well, that's a federal election cycle. It's a 2-year buildup for one night of an operation. So I'm excited for this. I think I do have a background that will support this kind of endeavor. Particularly, we'll go back to your first, it was Steve, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So go back to the first part of your question. How do I feel about $250 million federal dollars being found wasted in just one of Walz's boondoggle things? I mean, it's egregious. I don't have enough profanity in my vernacular to say how angry I am with our state, and Minnesota is one of the worst, and it's followed by California. And if you look at just going back to governance, just on a philosophical level now, we went from $2 billion in the black budget in Minnesota. I know I'm talking state things. I'm running for federal office, but it matters. We went from $2 billion in the black to going to be an $18 billion in the red by 2026. The state of Minnesota. He increased the size of government 500%. And frankly, he's the moderate of all the candidates that might go against. That is a crazy notion to think about.
Yeah.
That is obscene. I haven't heard it put in those numbers in a while, so that is a fact. And honestly, sir, your background, regardless of its relation to politics, is absolutely necessary in the present political arena. And so I personally thank you for putting that hat in the ring. Yeah. And man, I hope it sticks like glue.
We were actually talking.
My best talking point, guys. My best talking point is in a field where 93% of guys retain their jobs, 93% of federal incumbents win federal races because the systems are designed to keep the incumbents in office. 5 of 7 times, Navy SEALs have taken out Congress members. 5 of 7. And then we are 100% good at eliminating trash when it comes to the U.S. Senate. We're 100% at putting together teams that the best indicator of future success is past performance. We are 100% successful at taking out the trash in the U.S. Senate.
We were actually discussing that before you came on pre-show about the fact that a lot of the veterans that do run for office, they do kind of get a little bit of hatred, a little bit of, because it's like, oh, how did you explain it, Stephen, when we were talking about it?
Yeah,
about
so
the veterans.
Something that I've seen semi-consistently with veterans that run for office is the bravery from a battlefield doesn't always apply to bravery in broad, like, group social circumstances, because most of your teammates and most of your platoon mates only hate you in a loving way. They actually hate you. Whereas you will be serving next to people who straight up actually hate you. They'll smile to you. They'll shake your hand. They'll tell you that they'll work with you on bills. They'll help you co-write them. They'll tell you that your ideas are fantastic. And then they'll hope you're staring in the wrong direction as something very shiny protrudes from your chest.
Yeah.
And that's just the name of the game in politics. And I've noticed that with the right, which I mean, in fairness, and just like the conversation we've had so far, it seems like you'll probably beat this trend. But the trend seems that the sort of group dislike, which is part of the reason why I brought up the fraud, because so many of the people, definitely in Minnesota politics, but also in federal politics, are on the take here. And so you're signing up to be disliked by a whole bunch of people very publicly. And I'm into that. I'm into that. But on the same token, that is a very different feeling than, say, for example, having your whole country behind you, knowing that you are the tip of the spear and the nation and God himself smiles upon you. This is a little bit of a different circumstance where it's a little more bitter, a little more underhanded, and everybody that you're supposed to at least somewhat get along with may actually be after you. And so it's almost like it's very analogous to like the intelligence community to a degree, or like intelligence operations per se, where you're going to shake hands and do business with a whole bunch of people. Several of them you may be slotting later, but we'll see. And so like it's a little bit of a different animal. Pardon me. But you do seem to have a particularly strong character as pertains to what you're aware that your views are going to result in. So it sounds like you've already built the armor on the inside, so that way when you're confronted on the outside, it doesn't crack. It's already there. It's been fortified. It's consistent with the known patterns of approach, etc. So it sounds like you really do have your ducks in a row there, and that's honestly, that was the biggest worry I had.
I'm 41 years old. I'm not done growing and developing, and I pride myself on having enough self-reflection that we can have these conversations, and I can change my beliefs a little bit. But I think my moral compass at this point is solidified. I'm going to follow my moral compass, and at the end of the day, I have to wake up and look at myself in the mirror, and I'm going to make decisions based on how I look at myself in the mirror, because I will not sacrifice my own moral compass or integrity. I haven't for my entire life. I was forged in a hot crucible. I've done a lot of really. I'm still alive on this planet. I have a lot of brothers who aren't. So I know they're in Valhalla looking down at me right now, and I don't want to do them dishonor by sacrificing my edge.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And honestly, aside from honest conversations, we definitely need men who cannot be bought. Yeah. And that's like the two big ones really is honest conversations and men who cannot be bought. Those two things I think will absolutely get this country through the next century. We need them. We need every single one we can get, and we need them in the highest places we can get them.
My special interest for the last 22 years of service has always been the American people. That's my special interest group.
Well, we like that because that's the way it needs. So actually, my follow-up question on what we were just talking about is many of us have concerns about the election integrity. Do you support stronger voter ID laws, and what steps would you like to take to ensure fair and transparent elections in our state and I guess in the country as well?
Yeah, again, I'm gonna be honest, guys, because like we're at, and I'm a shitty politician. I'm really good at being honest, though. We care about elections. The American public, the majority of them, I'm not running on election integrity. I care about it near and dear to my heart. Certainly, that's not one of the things I'm focusing on my race, because I'm trying to win a race in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But like, what does that mean? Absolutely, I care about elections. I mean, that's one of the most fundamental things to again, going back to somebody who really cares about the Constitution and national sovereignty. You can't have national sovereignty without a secure election process. So while I care about it holistically, it's just not something I'm running on. But I'm happy to get into like where I think we should go with that and like what laws. But at the same time, because I'm a libertarian, I'm a small government guy. I think we need to set the left and right lateral limits at the federal level. But we really, again, there's a reason why those are ran at the state level, and to be hands off as long as, again, they're constitutional, American citizens, IDs. Another thing that Minnesotans certainly are tracking on, and America holistically does not even know, is that this year, I think it's May or June, we all have to get those stupid real IDs. Well, why is that? That's because Governor Walz and a couple of other left-wing governors are handing those things out at hotcake levels, so they have no meaning anymore. When you have to have more bona fides to get a library card than a driver's license, you've now relegated them useless for a travel document. You've relegated it useless for an identification purposes, and that's now why to get on a plane, you have to have a real ID for TSA. And I think that's a shame, and it's something I hope that whoever's running for government in the statewide elections just beats the heck out of the Walls and the Democrats or whoever's running for the governor, because that's going to be a lot of pain for a lot of people. I know everybody's been putting it off. We put it off because of COVID, but that takes effect this year. And I hope that whoever's running for these state elections really just hammers the left on why everybody in America now has to get new driver's licenses, because you ideological and your illogical failing policies have created a useless form of ID.
100% useless.
Oh, absolutely. And like how was it? Plato had a really great line. Voting is not a right, it's a skill. Because if you don't know what you're voting on or who you're voting for, your vote really isn't a vote.
No.
It's something else.
Yeah.
And that's very important concept just in general, because if you want to have a voice about how you would like your government run, you need to know what you're voting for and know who you're voting for. And that's something that, Americans have kind of gotten quite behind in. Obviously, you have your very religious voters and so on, but like the general masses, for example, they don't always vote, especially in local elections.
Yeah.
And, when they do, they may not even vote for what they understand, or rather vote for what is. They may vote for what they think is. And it may not be exactly what they think it is. And then they get taken in. We get a bunch of law that we, discover was just a horribly bad idea. But that's why there's so much media dollars being spent on things like, selling laws. They sell laws. Laws they don't make awareness campaigns about them. They're sales campaigns. They're selling you a law.
It's
vote for me. I'll get you this law passed.
Yeah. It's become a popularity contest. It's, you know what? I'm not supposed to agree with everything that you agree with, because that's called following the herd, but if you and I can come to a mutual understanding about a topic that you agree on and I don't, but if we can come to a mutual understanding on it, and I understand why you lean that way compared to the way I lean, you know what? I'm okay to support you in that, because I know there are other things that you and I agree on that we're going to work harder on to make sure that they become truths. So, I'm going to vote for the candidate I think best represents what I want as a Minnesotan, what I want as an American. Not because he's on the red, he's on the blue, he's in the middle, whatever. No, I'm going to vote like we had talked about on our first ever episode that we did of this. It was right before the election. We were like, who are we going to endorse? I'm like, dude, I'm endorsing J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance is going to be here a lot longer than Donald Trump is after 4 more years. And it was kind of a joke the way I did it, because I'm like, if you come right out back then, if you came right out and said, well, I support Donald Trump, the hate you got. So I'm like, no, I really didn't actually vote for Donald Trump. I voted for J.D. Vance because I see in his eyes that he, once again, like you, he's a veteran. He understands. He comes from nothing. He's made himself to be where he is today, and I appreciate that out of him. So I don't know. I'm excited to have you on our program, because I honestly do believe you are the type of candidate that the Minnesota people need on their side in Washington and down in the Twin Cities. I do believe that you are the proper candidate for us. So
that being said,
the feedback, and I'm certain at some point we'll have a hard discussion, and as Reagan said, those who are 80% with me, they're my allies, not my enemies.
yeah.
Maybe at the point we find the 20%, and I can tell you, even for the 20%, I'll hear you. And I want to work for you. I'm running for U.S. Senate Minnesota. I want to work for you. If at the end of the day I don't make the call that you aligned with for that 20%, I promise God is my witness right now. I'll either personally reach out or I'll have somebody from our team reach out and explain why, because I owe you that transparency. That's how I clean the other.
Transparency.
If I don't agree with you, if I can't get to that position on the issue that we maybe don't align on, I'll at least give you the transparency. And as again, just people with honor, I think you probably respect me for that.
Well, and the Americans have kind of forgotten how to do something called not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, against Minnesota GOP, the activist bases within the Minnesota GOP. We're talking about all those little groups now. The burn it all down. I refuse to play team ball. I'd rather have Tina Smith than a bunch of dudes who could be all stars, but we just want to play pickup basketball and not make a team.
Right, because a freer Minnesota and a freer America is what we're all after. You want the people that'll get you there.
Yeah.
Now, do you have to like the same favorite color?
No.
Do you have to both prefer SIG to HK? No. You can have a difference of opinion.
That's tough.
That's tough.
Hey, I'm not trying to go there. Not trying to go there. I there's ergonomics, there's barrels. Anyway,
This isn't that, guys.
I know, but man, you threw me off with that question. My brain just almost exploded because that's those are my two go-to. So
that's for the bar later. That's fine. Yeah. But no, you're right though. Like you don't have to have all of the commonalities as long as the heart and the philosophy are in the right place. Because you can't get every law that you want all the time. Sometimes you're gonna have to deal with law you don't like, and the goal is to maintain civility until such a time as that law can be changed. So like there is a little bit of a delay that'll likely go on, and the most important part is getting that foundation built so you can continue along the right trajectory, because then you will get there, your children will get there, their children will be there. And that's that. Sometimes you have to take the long view, and there's no need cutting your foot off before you go run a race because you don't like one of the toes. Like it's not worth it. It really isn't. And so you're absolutely right about that. I know plenty about that personal experience. It ain't great, but yeah. So and I'm glad that you're at least solid, if not strong, on election integrity, because it's a really tough thing to have genuine representation in a country if a bunch of people that aren't really voting for their representation are voting. People who are not citizens in this country, they have no skin in the game. They're just here because it's beneficial to them. You know.
You want to? Absolutely, I am.
That's a fundamental flaw that we conduct our census, and we count people that are non-U.S. citizens in the censuses, and then we draw our congressional maps off of those censuses that have incorrect data.
Yep.
So we have many more congressional reps added to these blue areas that have large portions of non-U.S. citizens because they get included in the census, and that gives the Democrats congressional reps in federal government. That is a pretty big, wild thing if you think about that, especially when we're talking about, a 4 or 5, member advantage or majority. That 4 or 5 of those people, I think it's like 70,000 people per congressional rep. We have like 10 million people that are non-U.S. citizens, but they're all getting counted in these censuses.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy how much of the congressional makeup is affected by those non-U.S. citizens, which should have no part in our voting objectively. I know that the left thinks that's like a debate. That's really not an objective debate. At least an intellectually congruent debate.
What really grinds my gears about that? It isn't just that people are here maybe the wrong way. And I firmly believe if you have like whatever X number of illegal citizens that own businesses and they're being productive members of society, hand them a sheet, would you? They're already doing the American thing. Just leave them be, right? Like get them squared away, get them correct and proper, and then move on. But at the end of the day, that still muddies up the process, not just the reps, but they're going to sit there and tell you how you're being horribly inhumane talking about these illegal citizens, non-citizens in the country, and they're people too. You imported them because in 7 years they'll pay taxes to fund your ridiculous fraudulent boondoggles, instead of having to wait 18 years for a genuinely 100% naturalized born American citizen, because those will take 18 to 19 years to actually start producing you some funds. So like the tax livestock thing is real, and it's brutal to watch the left go way out, like so far out of the house, not just south of the border, overseas, to import future taxpayers, because they know their taxes will kick in 7 to 8 years, 7 to 10 years, and they get their funding right away. And then they'll get in front of a microphone and tell you that you're a complete piece of shit for trying to suggest that, you know, what do you mean they shouldn't be voting? What do you mean we can't stack 30,000 refugees in your state and then give them voting rights, even though they don't really care about your state? They're not here because their lifelong dream was to live in Minnesota and half freeze to death for, you know, 5-6 months out of the year after living in a desert or someplace tropical.
It's been a long time dream of theirs.
Yeah.
Come freeze 100 degrees colder, like, at least.
Right. It's disgusting, because like they're basically the Democrats are treating these refugees and the illegals as human freight.
They're playing cards.
That should disgust everyone.
They're sports cards. That's all they are, man. They're sports cards.
Right?
So what's that thing that with trafficking that they've been talking about?
Yeah.
That, isn't it?
So
you could classify it as human crap, yeah.
So I want Adam's response. He was starting on with the integrity, right? I don't even remember where we were going with this.
Steve was just talking about illegal immigration.
Yes.
And I brought it back up to why that matters for our congressional maps at a federal level.
Right, because it's basically just stacking the deck for one party.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's ridiculous in terms of the reputation of an entire country's people. That's grossly immoral.
Yeah, it's not an accurate representation of the people when you're inducing millions of people, counting them on the census, and then using those censuses to form your congressional maps and districts.
Yeah,
You're actually gerrymandering the makeup of Congress.
I mean, when I managed the KFC restaurants down in the cities, I mean, every one of my cooks, that they were all Mexicans. They all used the same social security number. One would leave and come back like another month later. There'd be another, and he'd have the same social security number. They came here to work. They came here to make money to send back to whoever, and they never caused any problems. Look, man, just they didn't want to be citizens because they were here for one reason. That's to help their family in Mexico. I mean, I'd talk to them after hours, and they're like, yeah, he goes, the money I send home is 10 times what I would make down there doing the same job. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, really? And he's like, yep, that's why I'm here. He said, I'll be here for a year. I'll go back down to Mexico, and my cousin will come up with the same social security number. I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Wait, you're telling me I'm your manager? You shouldn't be telling me this. He goes, what are you going to do? I'm your best cook. I'm like, oh, shit. But, you know, I believe that the legal immigration is probably been my biggest fear over the last 4 years. I'm not even going to lie. And we need to get better integrity on what's happening for the simple reason for the elections, because we all know the reason why they came in, and it didn't help them this time. But is it going to help them in 4 years?
Well, I also want to point out that there is a silver lining. There is a hidden dagger, and the hidden dagger is almost every single refugee or illegal immigrant in their lives is pretty conservative. Oh. At least compared to what the left's playbook is. And in all honesty, that's probably going to lose them harder in the future than it's going to win them anything. Because I guarantee you, the Somalian community, they don't want their boys being girls. They don't want they don't want any weird wokeness going on. They consider that to be some kind of an aberration, an abomination in front of God. So good luck selling that one at the door. I mean, like, it's just one of those things. Like, when discussed with and you meet with a local imam, they will spread your information to their entire community, especially if you'll stand by their ability to raise their kids how they want and have the government leave them the hell alone. Which, I mean, to me, kind of it warms my cold, black, dead heart a little bit, just a little bit,
A little bit.
to know that they're going to blow a mountain of money and just pin the tail on the refugee for their future hopes. And all these refugees hate every word they have to say, when effectively translated, of course.
Oh, so Patrick, you said you have a question for Adam tonight? Patrick, do you got a question for Adam?
There we go. I heard you say my name and then my audio went out. But it came. Yeah. So I don't know how much time you have for us tonight.
I got about 15 minutes.
But about 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, and for me, it seems like you kind of touched on it a little bit. Well, a little bit of what is driving you a little bit. Because I wanted to go a little more philosophical with my man, and I just kind of want to know like the why for you. What makes you feel driven to actually step in and try to make the difference that you want to make, and what would be the biggest difference that you?
I mean that's a beautiful question, frankly. How you build a performing team, what is going to actually the inroad to build that team is the why statement. The most important part, it's called the 5-paragraph order, when you want to like give somebody all these different things before you're about to step off on a mission set. And this is not like Navy SEALs or Marines. This is like military holistically. You have all these different parts of the mission. The most important part of that mission that everybody going out the door needs to understand and be bought into is the why. And I'm a firm believer that as a candidate who's trying to, seek employment by all of you in the great state of Minnesota, the most important question should be, well, a couple of important questions: my character, and my integrity, but really why. That offers you the most gleaning reason for this mission set, right? Again, of all the things I've talked about, like what's my why? Well, my why, gentlemen, is I was actually adopted. My biological mother had me she was like 15 years old, and then 9/11 happened. My senior year of high school, as I already said, went and joined the Marines, did all 5 phases of Iraq, of OIF, then did some time with the Department of State, then came home. I was going to go to Georgetown, do the Walsh School of Foreign Service. I'd really started to be kind of a nerd then. And, besides just killing terrorists and bad guys, I developed a thirst for knowledge and policy and public policy and how countries negotiate and things like that. But then I was very blessed at 18 years old to find out that my biological parents, who are also from the Twin Cities area, had 3 other kids. They got married later on in their lives. And so I found out that I had 3 full-blood siblings on this planet. And that gave me just perspective to come back home and be a big brother to them as an adult, and seeing the things I did and all those experiences abroad and in combat. And then to see them kind of grow to adults. And then on top of that, then to sacrifice so much blood, sweat, and tears, and have my brothers, exploding in my arms in combat, and have so much death and sacrifice. So yeah, kind of 2 things that happened at the same time. At one, I had this beautiful sequence of events. First, I'm only on this planet because my mother chose life. And then not only that, but I found out that I have 3 full-blood brothers and sisters later on as an adult. Just this beautiful thing. And then at the same time, while I'm seeing all this death and destruction, going through all these personal trials and crucibles in combat, doing these terrible things that, the most terrible things men can do is to tear each other apart. Just terrible. And then I come back home later on after just having so much gratitude and thanks for this country that gave me all these opportunities. And again, traveling the world, finding a biological family here, being brought up. I'm just so thankful for all the offerings that our great nation has provided to every single person who was born American. You are truly the 1% of the world. Those people like to talk about, the white males or the 1%ers. If you are an American citizen, I have seen so many people. I mean, objectively, there's billions of people that want to be an American. And to be here, I'm so thankful for that privilege when I travel across the world. And then in 2020, to come back on the grid from doing one of those really important missions that I was working on for years, and to just kind of be blinders down, doing the work, doing these really cool, sexy missions, to come back and see COVID, and then see George Floyd, and then to see everything that I had worked for my whole life, and then back home in Minnesota, all the treasures of my family are back in Minnesota. See that all on the brink of falling apart. It shattered my world. And I talked about it earlier. At that point, I'd always been worked on these military objectives and military problem sets and find the solutions and go forth and figure them out and be part of the solution. From that point on, during COVID and George Floyd incidents and all the second order effects of trying to defund our police and shut down businesses and keep people out of churches and force people to take the shots, and just all of that, again, boils down to just poor leadership. I knew at that point in my life that I had truly been preparing my whole life for this mission set. This is the most important mission I've ever worked on. So that is my why, Patrick.
That, wow, above and beyond.
Beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. And congratulations on that that finding your brothers and sisters. That's an amazing thing, man.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
and of course, thank you for all of the service and everything that you put on the line for us on those 20 plus years of so we can actually still do this as a free country and talk freely amongst each other about stuff and not have to worry about it. That's my biggest worry is, the First Amendment. That is my biggest concern. The ability to speak freely. And I can honestly say over the last, I'm not even going to lie, but over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've seen a complete shift in everything, going from we're scared because we don't want to get canceled to fuck you, I'm going to say what I want, excuse my language, but it's a beautiful thing how everybody finally just went, wait, you can't beat us, we're bigger than you, and stop being the bully, because bullies get beat up, and they were bullying us for the last.
Although, brother, that the First Amendment right is now a right-wing talking point. That's a conservative talking point. We go back to like the Vietnam War and all the cultural dissension and government dissension. For the First Amendment rights, that used to be a left-wing. That was a Democrat talking point. And now, to find out in fall of 2024 that the Biden administration was putting political pressure to cancel free speech. This is the wildest vignette on that, gentlemen. I had somebody who was almost the vice president in the United States, the world's finest, most amazing country that's ever been on this planet, who ran a campaign as a vice president. I'm talking about Tim Walz now, saying you don't have a right to freedom of speech. He openly. That is. That's how close we came.
Hey, what do you expect from a guy who took all of his students to China to show them the wonders of communism?
That is crazy that we almost have a vice president who ran on you don't have a right to freedom of speech. Yeah, that's another hill I'll die on, guys. I will die on that hill.
So
one of Tyrant Tim's many
my
stupid things.
My favorite part of this last election cycle literally was the Vance Walz debate. Okay, that literally showed the entire world. Okay, look, this side over here, shoulders back, not a care in the world, answering his questions very calmly, made a few points. Walz is over there like fucking Daffy Duck. He has no place in the political realm. He does not belong in anything to do with politics. He belongs on the JV squad as an assistant coach of football. That's about the most power I want that man to have anymore in my life. Anyway.
I have one last thing that I want to make sure gets mentioned.
Yes.
Before we all become very, very chill and trail off as we are wont to do. April 5th this year at 11 a.m. Capitol, there's going to be a rally that happens almost every year. And it's around a particular piece of legislation called the Defend the Guard legislation. And as, of course, someone for whose service I literally couldn't thank you enough. There's no way to thank you for being the tip of the spear and going to the darkest places in this world, because I certainly didn't. So
Thank you.
I owe you to the bottom of my shoes for that. There are individuals who signed up to, of course, serve their nation, but mostly to serve their state, that get sent for longer deployments, see greater casualties, and get abused greater than commonly active duty service personnel. And that's been something that's been of great discussion. I speak at these rallies. I'm a huge advocate for that particular piece of legislation. And there are, sorry, I have a new puppy. There are a lot of efforts being put forth to try to get that through. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the way the Guard is used. I think it's the
I'll be an honest broker again, and another hopefully, and I'll maintain this thread throughout my whole hopes. I hope to be a long political career of service.
Let's go.
I don't know that legislature. I just don't know. I'm not going to pretend and blow smoke up your button and pretend I know it. But I do have a lot of experiences with seeing the Guard in CONUS in the United States and then abroad, more so as a Marine than anything else. So I can talk to you about where I think, as a policymaker, the use and the role of the National Guard. And it's National Guard, but it's really, that's a state force. In my opinion, in my experience, they are set up for failure when they were deployed to Iraq, because they did have longer deployments, but they were being employed almost as if they were a Marine battalion. And so on 2 of those 3 deployments, as an actual Marine battalion, we were like stormtroopers going and crushing souls and taking over areas and making what we call green. There was like green, orange, red, amber, whatever. We would take over that AO, make it green, pacify, come back. And then the next deployment, we'd go through that same AO, and they had some National Guard that were like a bunch of cooks or supply. And God bless them. Anybody who raises their hand to serve their nation, our great nation, I love and respect. They were set up for failure because they were sending these supply or armored units or whatever the heck they were. They were not an infantry unit. And they kept them there for a long time without adequate. Going back to the Kimberly Potts thing, the man training, equipping. They were not man trained and equipped for that mission set. They were set up for failure. And I saw death and destruction in those units, and the psychological trauma of those units. And yeah, it's to your point. I think you also mentioned they got shafted and they had to stay there longer too. It just does not make sense. I personally don't think that should be a role fulfilled by the National Guard. I think those should be state mechanisms. That should be natural disasters, riots, the George Floyd type thing. That button should have been hit sooner. I know they don't have training to do necessarily the SASO stuff, but every Guard unit should have that training. Every Guard unit should have the first responder, really the national disaster. I mean, those are the people that when you have stuff go wrong in the state, that's your body, your flood force to take care of something local. I don't think there's a good role for them in that capacity, and it certainly was not used successfully in Iraq. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my view on their role.
Right, it more or less does. Which is fantastic. That's as with every other question asked tonight, way more than I asked for, and absolutely worth every second. Yeah, and I want to make sure I make it a point to note that I know that there's been some political pundits who have used the terms like supply or cook to denigrate. What we're discussing here, for the sake of those listening, is the training level of the personnel being used. You cannot send cooks and supply with no essentially forward operating training.
A great point, Stephen. I'm talking about having I'll be very good with my words now, which I probably wasn't earlier. Sending combat roles to fulfill combat arms roles. When you're sending a non-combat, there's combat arms and non-combat arms. When you're taking these units that they're non-combat roles, all these people, they're not trained in combat. Every Marine is a rifleman. Everybody goes through basic training. I get that. So they have the basic skills to carry a weapon. But there's a night and day difference between a professional warfighter as a Marine Corps infantry battalion and somebody who's trained to hand out socks. It's just a very big. And when you deploy the people that are trained to hand out socks and expect them to be a Marine Corps rifle battalion, and you keep them alone and unafraid for a year, 18 months. You should not be surprised when they all come back with serious mental issues and you take a lot of casualties.
Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. And that was the only thing I just wanted to make sure I made that
Yeah.
distinction because there has been a bit I think Waltz referred to them as a bunch of cooks.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I want to make sure that
Arms are not
So
arms.
my
right, I just want to make sure we're staying way out of that category and I was clear on that. But yeah, 100%.
both of my boys were National Guard. One was a cook, and one that got sent to the cities was a diesel mechanic. So it's like neither one of them are non-combat roles. But the one child, my youngest boy, did actually make it over to Lithuania for 6 weeks to train the Lithuanians on something or other with diesel mechanics. So he got to see Lithuania, which that little prick. I was like, you. Anyway, so I know Adam, I know your time has run out. You said you had about 15 minutes and been about that. I just want to say it was an absolute pleasure meeting you and having this wonderful conversation tonight. I'm glad the boys got me involved to be here with you. I'm sure Stephen and Patrick feel the same way, that we're privileged to have you on our program because I personally believe you are the right person for that seat to take from Tina Smith.
Thank you, gentlemen. I truly appreciate your support. And I hope that, my ask is that you guys are all involved in your communities. Spread the word. I need to build a coalition. This is going to be a team building evolution. I know this is was an awesome opportunity to be on your show tonight, but I hope you guys all become, delegates at the state convention and spread the word. I have a website that'll be up probably at the end of next week. It's just Schwarze4Senate.com. It's not up yet, so don't worry about it, but I don't know when this is going to go live.
I mean, I got to support this guy. He's a Schwarze, man. My favorite program on TV right now is Shorzy, which is a Letterkenny thing from Canada. I am a Shorzy fanatic. So with a Schwarze, I got to give some Schwarze love, right?
Which, for reference,
that's actually authentically my humor, but I gotta clean it up, for now this next role in life. I can't act like a Shorzy in real life anymore.
Oh man,
I think you know that.
The missus and I actually wear Shorzy jerseys to games when we go see hockey games. We both wear Shorzy jerseys.
I have a Letterkenny Irish jersey that I got from my kids for my 50th birthday with my last name and my birth year on it. Oh yeah, I had a super soft 50th birthday party for my 50th, man. Oh dude, I am all about that humor. That's so. Hey, once again, Adam, thank you very much. If there's anything, obviously the three of us or any of our people that are on our sides, there's anything you need our help with, please reach out to us. We would love to help you. I know as much as we can.
Yeah, if you guys want to hit me up either on Facebook or the Instagrams or the Facebook stock page or Adam at Schwarze4Senate.com, you want to drop me your contacts. I'd love to expand our network and have some centers of influence. It sounds like you guys are a little dispersed throughout Minnesota, and I'd love to come up, have a beer, host your men's hockey club or whatever, and get to know more of the state. That's something I'm very transparent about as well. Just because I was a Marine and then a Navy SEAL and fought all over the world, I've spent the large part of my adult life fighting abroad for our principles, values, our Constitution. I really want to dive back into this. Is the battlefield now. My battlefield is not Iraq. My battlefield is Minnesota. I want to get to know the people, and frankly, I want to work for you. So I want to meet more of you guys.
Well, let's get you some soft power.
There you go.
So I was gonna ask you to shamelessly plug yourself, but you said you have the website coming out soon. How about any? Do you have any fundraising events planned yet coming up, or meet and greets?
Yes. So the interesting thing is, I was actually going to announce on March 15th already. So this has been a 3-year planning cycle for me. I really took this on. As I got out of the military, I knew this was going to be the next ridge line. So Tina Smith, we knew that she was going to vacate her seat because of the insider trading issue. So I'm very like my initiative in this battle that I just want to maintain. So I have a lot of fundraising. If you guys want to reach out, I can talk to that via email. I don't know if I really talk about that on this platform. But that's my next ridge line. Funding offer. So we can. I'm using the Tim Sheehy playbook, the U.S. Senator, former Minnesota Navy SEAL, who's now a senator in Montana.
Tim Sheehy.
I'm going to work like you guys know that, and I expect a Navy SEAL to work with that kind of ethic, and part of that is raising money so I can buy the websites and hire all the people. And as we talked about earlier, this political machine, it's gross. It's all about messaging, and
Yeah.
whoever has the money owns the message, unfortunately. So I'm very cognizant and realistic of that need as well.
So just want to let you know, Adam, I was an actual professional MC for 32 years. So if you need you need a trained voice for something, Patrick.
We'll have I was actually going to have a launch party on March 15th. So we'll probably do that at some point, either April or May. But I will reach out. I'd love to have you. I'd love to have you on the stage, brother.
All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this has been We Are the People. I'm Mick. That's Patrick. Down there is Steven. And, of course, our guest tonight was Adam Schwarze, running for U.S. Senator in the next election, 2026. Best of luck to you, my friend, and thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thanks, gentlemen. God bless. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Adam.
You.